Welcome to Bringing Jesus Back into Focus. I'm Christopher John Joseph in Melbourne, Australia. Born into the Jewish Christian faith 68 years ago, by the time I reached the age of reason, around 16 or 17, I left the Christian Catholic Jewish Church because they were teaching that the Old Testament, the Yahweh in the Old Testament, God Yahweh, was exactly the same as the divine source of pure love that Jesus was at one with and taught about. Of course, once you reach the age of reason, you go, hang on, that's wrong. So I left, but I took Jesus with me and his words, and that's all I've ever needed. I've never needed anything else in the whole Bible. It wasn't until recently, after I contracted a fungal illness, and I've started to reinvestigate why the churches are teaching these things and look at the history of it. So I've launched one book, The Gospels. Where are we now? There we are. Where are we? There we are. So the Gospels of Jesus Unplugged, that's been published around the world. And that's a new translation of the Gospels, a better translation with less Jewish overlays on it. The term God the Father is replaced with loving spiritual creator. So it's more universal in its sort of dialogue. Poor Greek translations from the original text have been improved so that you can understand his meaning better, what he's talking about. So that's published now, and I've just uploaded today. I finished it on his birthday, actually, on Christmas Day 2025, the Teachings of Jesus Unplugged. It's taken me quite a while to do it because of this illness I've got at the moment, so it sort of slows me down. But the main points are there, and you might find it quite interesting, particularly if you've left the Jewish Christian church, for whatever the faith may be you were in, the dualistic faith, where they teach the two different religions as being one, which is incorrect. You can contact me at jcinfocus@gmail.com. If you would like one of these books, by all means, contact me and I'll organise a price and postage for you and send one out to you. You might find it quite interesting and stimulating. Young people seem to, of course, find it interesting, what I have to say. Older people tend to be a little bit less interested at the moment. Now, this is the book, The Teachings of Jesus Unplugged, which I'm just going to go through the chapters now on YouTube. I'll probably just do one or two on each video, so they're not too long. So we'll get straight into it. The Teachings of Jesus Unplugged. So that's the actual cover there. If we can just get the little zippy-doo here. There we go. The spiritual teachings of Jesus are a universal calling to all human children on earth to awaken into our spiritual body and true identity of love and non-violence before our dualistic body and mind of the flesh dies and returns to the earth. Only our spiritual body and soul live on. We must prevent the dualistic mind of our earthly body of flesh from controlling us and become at one with our spiritual mind filled only with the loving life force of our loving spiritual creator. Then our two bodies, one made of the earth and one formed of spirit, can be in harmony and at one in purpose to bring the spiritual love and peace of heaven to earth for all children. Only the true spiritual children of light and love can enter the heavenly spiritual world. All those children divided within themselves between love and hatred cannot enter. The words of Jesus can awaken and transform us. So this is the actual book itself. The Teachings of Jesus Unplugged. There's the contents. I'll let you look at those if you want to pause it, but there's some different topics there that you'll find quite unusual, and yet at the same time when you look at them yourself and the logic I use, and plus I just use the words that are there, both in the Old Testament and the New, to simply point out the intelligent, what I call the intelligent belief of what Jesus was saying, what I call intelligent faith. Spirituality, although it's otherworldly, it still has to make sense. It can't be contradictory. And that's the problem we've got with the Jewish Christian churches. They contradict themselves all the time. So there's the contents. Just the introduction. Jesus of Nazareth was a pacifist spiritual teacher of peace and universal love. His teachings provide a spiritual path and way of life to follow that lead us to a spiritual awakening and inner transformation. He taught we all have another spiritual body with us right now that is only empowered by a loving spiritual life force from a pure source of love, belonging to a divine loving spiritual creator in a heavenly spiritual world. He calls this the treasure hidden in the field of our flesh, that we must all seek and find to become at one with while here on earth. He teaches that our spiritual body and identity is eternal and is singular in the way we view all of life through a soul mind of only love. He teaches our bodies of flesh are temporary, die, and return to the earth from which they are formed, and are dualistic by nature, and must be brought into alignment with our spiritual body and soul mind of love to manifest this heavenly spiritual love on earth that empowers our spiritual bodies and soul mind. The main purpose of his teachings and spiritual way of love and non-violence is to awaken us to our true spiritual eternal identity and heavenly life, empowered only by this loving spiritual life force, and arise from the temporary flesh into eternal spiritual life in a heavenly spiritual world of love. We only need to understand and follow his teachings and spiritual way of love to awaken our true identity as spiritual children of a spiritual loving creator in a heavenly spiritual world. In order to reveal a clearer understanding of the spiritual way of love that Jesus taught and how you and I can become at one with it as he did, we must unplug him from the dualistic Jewish religion which worshipped two opposing gods, both called Yahweh, a brutal murdering war god and a god of peace and love, two different Godheads, making it dualistic on a monotheistic body called Yahweh. Jesus cut the Godhead of War from the body of Yahweh, leaving only a singular Godhead of divine love, which is not dualistic. This is what he meant when he said, if your eye or mind is single, your whole body will be filled with light, but if you are divided, you will be filled with darkness. This book was written to help remove the old wine Jewish overlays placed onto Jesus and our loving spiritual creator that are distorting his original universal spiritual teachings of love and non-violence and the source of divine love. I've met many Christians who have left the Jewish Christian churches because of the Jewish Old Testament distorting our loving creator and Jesus, but they also left behind the wondrous spiritual teachings and way of Jesus as well. I left the Jewish Christian Catholic Church over 50 years ago because of this same reason, but I took Jesus and his beautiful spiritual words of love and non-violence and the way to the heavenly spiritual world with me. My understanding of what he taught was never poisoned by the Jewish war god Yahweh, because I rejected it just as Jesus did, as being a false god and nothing to do with Jesus and his way of love. Jesus warned his followers to never mix his new wine understanding of the loving spiritual creator in with the old wine, two-headed god Yahweh of the Jews. But the early Christian leaders mixed the two wines together, perverting the identity of our loving spiritual creator and distorting the way of love of Jesus. I hope this book will help restore the connection to Jesus and the one true spiritual source of our spiritual life through freeing the words of Jesus and their meanings from the distortions of the Jewish overlays that have held them captive for over 1700 years, and inspire children to believe in the heavenly spiritual world and his spiritual way of love to enter this spiritual world. This is a daily prayer that I formulated from essentially his teachings, which I love saying each day. I use the pronoun she because I see that divine source that gives birth to our life, or creator, is like a mother, of course. Women give birth. But use he, of course. Most Jewish Christians are familiar, they're used to the patriarchal Jewish pronoun he, father. Even Jesus used the word father. He couldn't use the word mother, he would have been blaspheming. They would have stoned him to death. But I use she. This is the prayer, the daily prayer to center your spirit. So this prayer brings you into your spiritual body, which we'll talk about in the book and Jesus talks about all the time. This is the prayer. As I rest upon the earth, the Holy One will give birth to who I really am, awakening me from clay and sand, a spiritual child of the divine, with only her love that fills my mind. To every creature I will be kind in every single land. For this is truly who I am, a spiritual child of the loving spiritual creator in the heavenly spiritual world, born out of the earth, to bring her love to children in need and guide them home to heaven as she's guided me, through the spiritual way and teachings that Jesus gave us to be just as he, a spiritual child of love on earth. If you say that prayer every day and think that you're in your spiritual body when you're saying it, not your physical body, it'll help your spiritual body come alive. It's helped me anyway. Chapter 1, the new wine corrections. Now in chapter 1, I've just briefly listed some of the main chapters in the book, later on in the book, but this gives you an idea of my understanding, which you'll find is very different to the Jewish Christians. But I've never been a Jewish Christian. You see, I left when I was 16. I've never been influenced by any of the Jewish religion at all. I just know Jesus through his words. And even those words in the Gospels, I had to untangle them from things that have been also wrongly put in there or mistranslated. So this chapter is a sort of a summary of the main big points in the book, you might say, but the other chapters are about just love and forgiveness and such things. The new wine corrections. The following is a short summary of the main points and corrections concerning the new wine understanding that Jesus taught about our spiritual identity and eternal life, our temporary body of flesh, our loving spiritual creator, and the way to the heavenly spiritual world. Never mix the new wine with the old wine. He warned everybody not to do it, and they sure did. This following one truth is extremely important to see and understand, as it will help you remove the distortions that have been placed onto Jesus, our loving spiritual creator in the heavenly spiritual world, and the way of love that will definitely lead you to the heavenly spiritual world after your spiritual body separates from your body of temporary flesh, after passing through the death experience of your body of flesh, which we all have to do. Jesus said, "A man should never put new wine into old wineskins, for if he does, the new wine will burst the skins, and the new wine will be lost, and the wineskins will be destroyed. But new wine must be put into new wineskins, and no man used to drinking old wine desires new wine, for he only knows the old wine, and thinks it is good enough." In the Thomas Gospel, Jesus said, "A person cannot mount 2 horses or bend 2 bows, just as a servant cannot serve 2 lords or gods. That servant would respect one and offend the other. No person drinks aged wine and immediately wants to drink new wine. New wine is not poured into old wineskins, for the skins may break, and aged wine is not poured into new wineskins, for the wine may spoil. No one tears a piece of cloth from a new garment and sews it onto an old garment. If he does, the patch will not match the old, and it will lift away from it the new from the old, and a worse split or schism is made between the two." Jesus is saying, don't mix the loving spiritual creator up with Yahweh, whatever you do. They don't match. These are the warnings Jesus gave to his followers about the old Jewish religion and his new spiritual awakening to the true source of our spiritual life. And all Christians have to wake up and also understand what Jesus understood. The Jewish religion is not a monotheistic religion with only one God, but a dualistic religion with 2 very different opposite Godheads on one body called Yahweh. A Godhead of War, murder and thieving called Yahweh 1, and a Godhead of love and peace called Yahweh 2. Once you realize this obvious truth, you will see Jesus and the loving spiritual creator of Jesus in a new way and light. It is extremely important that all Jewish Christian churches in the world stop teaching this lie that there is only one God in the whole Bible. Yahweh 2 is a God of love and peace. But now that the Jewish war god Yahweh 1 is on full display in the West Bank and Gaza in 2025, if you don't wake up to this truth now, you never will. Yahweh 1 is a Godhead of brutal revenge, war, murder, stealing, and lies. This is the satanic Godhead of war Jesus was referring to when he said to the Jews who followed it, "Why don't you understand my words? It is because you cannot bear to hear my message. For you are children of your father Satan, and you want to carry out his desires. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not abide in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own resources, for he is a liar and the father of it." The best example of the Jews worshipping this satanic Godhead of War, Yahweh 1, can be seen in the book of Joshua, at the slaughter and genocide of Jericho, committed by the Jews who were directed by this satanic Yahweh 1 to go and do it. They murdered every man, woman and child, sheep and donkey by the sword, and stole the gold, silver and bronze treasures to take back to their God of War Yahweh 1 temple. and burned the whole city to the ground and stole all the lands. Now, if you can tell me you see Jesus in that, then I'm sorry, you need to go to an optometrist to get some glasses. These are the same modern day Zionists who are committing murder and genocide in Gaza and the West Bank because they say their Godhead of War, Yahweh One, has promised the land of the Palestinians to them. So they are going to drive them out or wipe them out, try to obliterate Gaza and the West Bank and steal it from them. Jericho all over again. This is the satanic Godhead of War that Jesus cut off from Yahweh's body, leaving only the Godhead of love. But as Jesus said himself, the Jews did not want to let it go, and they still don't. We must remember Jesus risked being stoned to death every day for speaking out against the war god Yahweh One, and he had to use parables or words that indirectly pointed to and condemned the evil Yahweh One without directly stating it was Yahweh. And he was in a bind because he could not easily say it was Yahweh, because the cunning Jews also called their God of love and peace Yahweh as well. He referred to the two different Yahwehs, condemning the evil war god Yahweh, while praising the God of love in ways like this, when he taught, "You have heard it said of old, to love your neighbour and hate your enemy." There's the two gods. "But I say to you, love your enemy. Pray for those who persecute you and despitefully misuse you, so that you may be children of your loving spiritual Creator in heaven. For her sun rises on the evil and the good, and her rain falls for the just and the unjust. If you wish to be her spiritual children, your love must be as perfect as her love." Here he is obviously calling out the war god of the old dualistic Jewish religion as being a false god, while leading them into the singularity of the one true loving spiritual Creator of our spiritual bodies and soul minds of love. Yahweh too is a Godhead of love that could lead to the universal loving spiritual Creator that Jesus was at one with, and we all could be. The simplest example is found in Leviticus. Yahweh too says, "If a foreigner resides amongst you in your land, do not mistreat them. You must treat them as a Jew and love them as yourself." This is the universal message of love that Jesus taught, that we are all spiritual children of our loving spiritual Creator, and we should all recognize this in everyone we meet, regardless of superficial differences. Many Zionists ignore Yahweh too to worship Yahweh One instead, but use Yahweh too to love other Jews, while they slaughter other foreigners and steal their land, as in the West Bank in 2025, using Yahweh as a pathetic excuse. A schizophrenic religion built on a lie that these very two different opposing Godheads are the same one God, called Yahweh. That is what Jesus is saying when he stated they cannot ride two horses at the same time, or bend two bows at the same time, or serve two lords or different gods at the same time. If they kill and murder foreigners in the name of their war god Yahweh One, then they offend their Godhead of love Yahweh too. And if they love foreigners in the name of their Godhead of love Yahweh too, then they offend their war god Yahweh of dominance, murder and thieving, Yahweh One. As Christians, we must never believe the lie that Yahweh is one God and the same loving spiritual Creator of us all that Jesus became an awakened spiritual child of while here on earth in the flesh. We must only turn to our loving spiritual Creator who gives true life and can never harm anyone. He also was clearly referring to the old two-headed God of the Jews and the one true loving Creator when saying that the garment or identity of this new spiritual loving Creator does not match the garment or identity of the old two-headed Yahweh God. And if anyone tries to tear a piece of the new one spiritual loving Creator and try to sew it onto the old two-headed Yahweh God, it will lift off because they do not match. And you will make things a lot more confusing and complicated to understand the truth about your spiritual identity as her children, and the schism between you and our one true spiritual loving Creator will be made worse and more confusing. Again, we see Jesus using clever analogies to indirectly condemn the war god Yahweh One, so as not to be stoned to death for directly blaspheming the war God Yahweh, the divine spiritual source of life that Jesus found and became a living spiritual child of, is not the two-headed God Yahweh. This is why Jesus could never use the word Yahweh to refer to her or him, because Yahweh refers to two gods, not one. But nearly all the Jewish Christian churches do exactly what Jesus said not to do and teach Yahweh is the one God of Jesus and the Jews. They must stop doing this today. Is it any wonder many intelligent Jewish Christian church children have walked out on their churches as a direct result of all those dualistic churches teaching this lie and distortion about Jesus and our loving spiritual creator, causing confusion and disillusionment? Once you realize this simple truth, it will help set you free from the Jewish distortions overlaid onto Jesus and open up your spirit to really come alive, empowered only by the loving spiritual life force of our loving spiritual creator in the heavenly spiritual world. The loving spiritual creator only heals, restores, and gives true spiritual eternal life to all who wish to receive it, and can hurt no one, as her whole being is only empowered by pure love. And it is the purity of her spiritual love, untainted by any evil, that is the real power we all need to join with right now, while our heart is still beating. The Jewish Yahweh is a divided God within itself, and is therefore filled with darkness. Jesus said, if your eyes single, if your mind or eyes single, your whole body will be filled with light. Thomas Gospel, when anyone should come to be whole, they will be filled with light. When, however, they come to be divided, they will be filled with darkness. Wake up. This is a new day to understand the truth that Jesus was really teaching and become a living spiritual child of our loving spiritual creator in the heavenly spiritual world while you are still in the body of flesh. Cut yourself free from the tentacles of the Jewish Yahweh One War Godhead and stay with the divine loving spiritual creator of Jesus, which Yahweh too was moving towards. Now that's a really powerful point that no Jewish Christian church is ever going to tell you that. But just use your own brain, your own God-given brain. It's got to be logical. It's got to be intelligent, yet still supernatural and spiritual. Still got to believe in heaven. But she doesn't hurt anyone, or he, if you want to call God he. They can't hurt anyone because they're only love. Jesus was only love. He didn't go around killing anyone. We all have two bodies with us now. In the chapters ahead, we will see how many times Jesus actually taught this truth. He explains they are made of different life forces, one being earthly and one being spiritual. All our earthly bodies of flesh are only empowered by earthly material things such as potatoes, water, gases and other material elements, and die and return to the earth just as his did. But he teaches we also have an eternal spiritual body with us when he taught, the kingdom of heaven is within you. Our spiritual body is only empowered by the loving spiritual life force of our loving spiritual creator. Jesus spoke of this when he taught, I am in our loving Creator's spiritual life force, and our loving Creator's spiritual life force is in me. If we just understand his words and follow and practice them, they will awaken our spiritual bodies, and they will become our primary body on earth and beyond after our body of flesh dies. As Jesus said, flesh only gives birth to flesh. Spirit only gives birth to spirit. Marvel not that I tell you, you must be born again from above. The importance of being a pacifist Christian. In these chapters we will see how the early church leaders were corrupted by Emperor Constantine in the 4th century and converted true pacifist Christians, following faithfully to the spiritual way of love and non-violence that Jesus taught, back into being Jewish Christians, so they could murder the enemy like the Jews. A total disgrace that this filthy lie is still being preached by most Jewish Christians today, slandering Jesus and our loving spiritual creator. As Jesus said, do not be afraid of those who can kill your body of flesh, but can never kill your soul and spirit, but rather be concerned about your spirit and soul being destroyed by corruption, preventing you from entering the heavenly spiritual world of love. Jesus let go of his body of flesh, and so must we one day. Get ready by becoming spiritually alive now. The identity of light or shadow. In these chapters, we will see how we can become our true spiritual eternal identity of light now, or create a false shadow identity from our own imagination by turning our back on the light and love of our loving spiritual Creator. No evil of any kind can come forth from an awakened spiritual child of light, empowered only by a loving Creator's spiritual life force. Only love, compassion, forgiveness, non-violence, equanimity, generosity, honesty, spiritual truth, and care for others can be manifested. However, all evil can only come forth from a false, lying, dark shadow identity created by a narcissistic, egotistical, self-serving state of mind. They project an identity onto themselves to live out of, produced from a figment of their own imagination, to dominate others, to steal, enslave, and even murder, empowered only by the body of the flesh. There is no spiritual life force involved in their actions or thoughts, so consequently their spirit grows weak and is covered in their own darkness, cut off from heaven and the source of real life. Mother Teresa, Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, and many other beautiful children lived out of their true spiritual identities of light to a great degree. Buddha and Jesus perfected the spiritual light within themselves and became fully enlightened children of our loving spiritual Creator on earth. And they both said, we can all be just as fully enlightened as they were. On the other hand, all the warmongers of the world, including those in 2025, are false shadow identities and living a lie while they slaughter and rob children of our loving Creator. They have become the children of the satanic war god, and as they give out suffering to other children of our loving Creator, they will eventually all receive that same suffering back upon themselves unless they repent for their evil before their body of flesh dies. We must feel outraged at their satanic actions and do our best to try and stop them, but sorry, they are all heading for a hellish experience after death. There is no need to kill their bodies of flesh, as one day they will all die anyway and reap what they have sown. The spiritual law of reaping what we sow. In these chapters we will see that Jesus clearly taught there is a life after the death of our body of flesh, though we must be careful because we will all reap as we have sown. Our loving spiritual Creator and Jesus do not cause any suffering to anyone. If we end up in a place of burning realizations cut off from heaven, where we have to undergo cleansing of our souls and spirits, then we are the ones who created it by ourselves. Our loving Creator and Jesus will do all they can to stop us creating a living hell for ourselves after we die to fall into, but they must allow us free will to choose. All the beautiful children of the light, who only bring love into the lives of others, will receive the same love after their body of flesh dies, when their soul and spirit leaves and enters into a spiritual world beyond all suffering, empowered only by love. We are all under the spiritual law of reaping as we sow, for how could there be a more perfect justice? Instead of our loving spiritual Creator and Jesus being our judges, as many Jewish Christians wrongly teach, it is we ourselves who pass judgment upon our own life, by planting seeds while alive to reap the fruits of after we die. Evil seeds we plant while alive in the flesh can produce many various fruits of bitter sufferings. We must later consume them. Seeds of love can only produce fruits of love, as Jesus and Buddha both taught. With what measure you give out, it will be measured back to you. Karmic consequences really do happen. Characteristics of a spiritual child on earth. Jesus describes our true spiritual identity and the spiritual characteristics that form our spiritual identity as the new covenant. The Greek word translated as covenant more correctly means our new disposition or new character. His own awakened spiritual life displayed these qualities to us. These mainly include love, compassion, forgiveness, non-violence, equanimity, generosity, honesty, spiritual truth, and caring for those in need, whether in physical or spiritual need. Jesus provides numerous parables and direct teachings to help us understand and focus on these important living spiritual aspects we all must integrate into our earthly lives to awaken our true eternal spiritual body and soul mind of love. These spiritual qualities are all empowered by our loving spiritual Creator's life force, and all of them are necessary for us to become whole or singular in light. They are like the wedges of a circle that are all needed to come together in order to form a full circle window for the light to shine through. And every single child on earth only has to become at one with these characteristics, and they will become an awakened heavenly spiritual child on earth. But they must not have any of the dark counterforces in with them, or they will become divided and be in darkness. Regardless of having religion or no religion, or belief in heaven or not, or in a loving creator or not, with these characteristics making up who you are, we will all automatically be brothers and sisters and loving spiritual children of heaven on earth. His words save us, not his blood. He said so. Jesus is recorded saying approximately 17 times that it is his words that clean you and save you if you listen to them, understand them, and become awakened or transformed by them. Nearly all the Jewish Christian churches wrongly teach that it is his blood on the cross that cleans you of sin and saves you. But this is another one of the Jewish overlays placed onto Jesus, seeing him through a very strong Jewish lens, making him out to be a sacrificial lamb who dies for our sins. This is an incorrect understanding based on the Old Testament Yahweh one war Godhead who demanded sacrifices of innocent animals to gain his favour. We see it in the sacrifice of an innocent lamb and its blood being placed over the doors of the Jews in Egypt to protect them from sickness, killing innocent animals in the Yahweh 1 and 2 temple to atone for their sins, and in the red heifer sacrifice, where an innocent unblemished cow was slaughtered and burnt, and the ashes are used to cleanse you of sin. Bad luck if you're a vegetarian and can't be involved. Only once in the Gospel of Matthew is it recorded that Jesus said at the Last Supper, "Take this cup and drink from it, for this is my blood of the new covenant," new character, poured out for many, then for the forgiveness of sin. This ending was added by Matthew and is not in other Gospels. In John's Gospel, chapter 15:3, Jesus at the Last Supper actually said this is what makes you clean of sin. So we've actually got Jesus saying what will clean you of all sin at the Last Supper to the disciples, which everyone ignores, but I don't. He said, "You are already clean because of the words I have spoken to you." There is Jesus himself unequivocally stating to the disciples before he's being killed, "Don't worry, you're already clean because of the words I have spoken to you. If you understand my words, you won't sin." And many times he stated, "My words, they are spirit and they are life. He who listens to my words and understands them will never taste death." His blood on the cross tells us we all have another body that is spiritual and eternal, but it is his words that save us by bringing us alive to who we really are, spiritual children of a loving spiritual creator in a heavenly spiritual world of love. Obviously, if he doesn't tell us how we have to behave to be spiritual, how are we going to wake up to become spiritual? So his words are just so important. Manifesting spiritual love in a material world. Actually, I met this Jewish Christian who said to me, "Do you believe Jesus' blood saves you?" I said, "No." His words, he said his words save us. And that Jewish Christian said to me, "Oh, well, you're not going to get to heaven then." So I said, "Oh, read his words." Manifesting spiritual love in a material world. Once we understand his teachings and we awaken to become spiritual children, we then must manifest this heavenly love through our body of flesh for all children we meet. Jesus makes this very clear in his teachings that once awoken to our spirit, we are to serve others and help them in any way we can. It is our awakened spiritual identity that then uses our earthly body of flesh to manifest the loving spiritual life force that empowers our spiritual body here in this material world. Without our earthly body of flesh, we could not easily manifest spiritual love for other children in this material world. Jesus teaches that our two bodies must be at one in purpose when he says, "The inner will be like the outer." The spiritual body of water in the vase and the earthly vase body containing the water become one dynamic manifestation of heavenly love on earth. All Christian charities in this world manifesting heavenly love for all without discrimination come forth from the teachings of Jesus. They are seen in his teaching about the sheep and the goats. When the sheep come into the presence of our loving spiritual Creator after passing through our death experience, the children of love and light will hear her say, "When I was hungry, you fed me. When I was thirsty, you gave me to drink. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was a stranger, you took me in. When I was sick, you cared for me. And when I was in prison, you visited me." And they will say, "But when did we ever see you in such need, loving Creator, and do these things for you?" And she will answer, "When you did it to the least of my children, you did it to me." Enter into the heavenly spiritual world of love. Come in. You've understood what Jesus taught you or someone else taught you. It's all about love. And the goats, who are those who refuse to help her children in such need and are not allowed to enter the heavenly spiritual world and are dismissed, and must undergo cleansing and further learning and reap the consequences of their heartless, greedy actions. So in the parable, of course, those who didn't do this, they have to be sent away because they didn't help her children in need. They were selfish or greedy or hurt them or killed them. Apocalyptic Jewish overlays placed on Jesus. This is another thing Jewish Christian churches will never tell you. All the sayings in the gospel about Jesus returning one day on the clouds to personally usher in a massive destructive apocalypse upon the earth are all false. Jesus never said any of these, even those directly put into his mouth, mostly by Matthew. Matthew is well known as the Jewish gospel, with numerous Jewish overlays placed onto Jesus for the benefit of the Jewish people to try to make Jesus more acceptable to the Jews and persuade them to follow his new understanding of our loving spiritual Creator. But Matthew often distorts the teachings of Jesus and links Jesus back to the two-headed Yahweh, God of the Jews, and especially the book of Daniel. I've shown clear examples of how Matthew deliberately perverted sayings of Jesus from the original found in the Gospel of Thomas about awakening spiritually to your true spiritual identity into a segue to attach an apocalyptic ramble of his own making. He shifts other sayings around also to produce this same distortion, perverting the real spiritual meaning of the words of Jesus. Jesus was never an apocalyptic Jew. It has all been fabricated and overlaid onto him. Jesus is not coming back. He wants you to wake up to your true spiritual identity and follow him to the heavenly spiritual world beyond all suffering, where he is waiting to greet you. Jesus rose from the dead. Yes and no. Again, they're not teaching you the proper truth that Jesus taught. Here we will look at the truth that the body of flesh of Jesus did die and did not rise again, just as Jesus himself taught using his own words. We will also see quite clearly he repeatedly taught that our spiritual body would leave our body of flesh and reap as it has sown. We then sift through the red herrings placed in the Gospels to cover up this truth, but also the clues left to reveal the truth, that he did indeed rise in a body of spirit, not flesh. The best two examples are found in John, who provided a very strong red herring, but also the most telling truth about Jesus now being in a perfect spiritual body. John's red herring is the doubting Thomas episode, where Thomas was not present when Jesus appeared to the disciples. And John drops it into the storyline and gives graphic details about the wounds on the hands, side and feet of Jesus from the crucifixion. But it does not appear in any other gospel. And in fact, the truth is found in the Gospel of Luke, stating that Thomas was actually present when Jesus appeared. People just don't read the Gospels. They just listen to the rubbish. John's obvious and best confirmation that Jesus rose in a fully spiritual body is given when he appears to Mary Magdalene at the tomb in John's Gospel. Mary goes to hug Jesus after she recognizes it is him. But Jesus says to Mary, "Do not try to hug me, Mary, for I have not yet ascended to our loving spiritual Creator." It is put this way to cover the simple fact that Jesus was now only in his spiritual body, while Mary was still in her body of flesh and could not hold the spiritual body of Jesus as they are two different life forces. John was a very close disciple of Jesus, and while covering up the truth to save the teachings, he also hid the clues in amongst his writings for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. If you listen to his words, you can see it quite clearly. It takes someone to perhaps point it out to you, that's all. There's an elephant in the room here. It's got... Oh, I didn't notice it. No, they never told you about it. Revelation ruse. I love this chapter. Here we will see how the book of Revelation is a cunning ruse to destroy the teachings of Jesus and slander him and our true loving spiritual creator, while converting Christians back into being Jewish Christians to worship the two-headed God Yahweh of the Jews. It was placed in to tie Jesus into the Old Testament book of Daniel and the false apocalyptic accounts in the Gospels attributed to him. The apocalypse belief was adopted from the Zoroastrians by the Jews, and the Old Testament book of Daniel is the real apocalyptic book. The fake Revelation book is just a regurgitated Daniel and a load of rubbish to slander Jesus and our loving spiritual creator, confuse and distract followers of Jesus, and sever your connection with our loving creator and heaven while destroying your true spiritual identity. I personally advise every single Christian to rip it out and burn it. The only thing it is useful for is to start a fire. It's a great chapter, that. I love it. These are some of the new wine truths. The above topics represent some of the much needed corrected understandings about the life and spiritual way and teachings that Jesus gave. It is extremely important that all the distortions and perversions still being taught to children about Jesus and the true divine loving creator of his life and ours are brought to an end right now by all the Jewish Christian churches. The Bible must be cut into two separate books, the old wine Jewish two-headed God Yahweh religion and the new wine one loving spiritual creator religion that Jesus founded. Rip out the book of Revelation and burn it. I've explained as best as I can the truth amongst the lies to help free Jesus and our loving spiritual creator from the chains of Jewish overlays that have been poisoning the beautiful universal spiritual way and teachings of Jesus for over 1700 years. And I hope it helps free confused children from the distortions as well. I've been a gardener and close to nature all my life on earth, and I've always seen Jesus and our loving creator since a very young child as love and non-violence. I've never been polluted or poisoned by being brainwashed with the Jewish overlays, which has given me a seemingly unusual, but I believe clearer understanding about Jesus and his teachings compared to Jewish Christians. I hope my own beliefs are of some help to others on their own journey to awaken spiritually and make their way home to the heavenly spiritual world of love. God is love, love is life. Love your way to heaven, bring heaven's love to earth. We need you to help this happen. There is no one else who can be you. Help increase the power of love on earth by becoming a spiritual child of heaven on earth. Well, there you go. We'll stop there at that chapter 1, and I'll do another video with chapter 2 or 3. I might put 2 or 3 of the short chapters. But that's a general understanding of why this is so different, this book, The Teachings of Jesus Unplugged. Because I've never been a Jewish Christian, except when I was a child, of course. Naturally, you just go along for the ride until you reach the age of reason. And certainly in the 1970s, early 1970s, along with the peace movement, the anti-war movement that sprung up around the world against the Vietnam War, I was in that generation, and it was just clear to see that the Jewish religion, Yahweh, is a distortion. It's a two-headed God. I think my description of that is the most accurate description in the world. One monotheistic body, Yahweh, written on the chest here, Yahweh, but two heads. One brutal, violent war god, murdering, thieving, genocidal maniac, like the Roman god Mars, Greek god Ares, Egyptian god Sekhmet, I think it is. They all slaughtered and murdered and stole land. That's what they did. So did the Jews. And they all had a war god, except Romans and Greeks and the Egyptians had a separate temple, you see. God of love or peace, Pax for the Romans. They go to war, they go to the other temple, Yahweh, the god of Mars. But the Jews, whether they wanted to go and love and kill, it didn't matter. They just went to this one temple. Kill and murder and love. One temple, Yahweh. There are two gods in that temple. It's a two-headed God. Once you understand that truth, that fact, it'd be wonderful if some modern rabbis ripped out all the references to their war god in their scriptures, rip them out, and just have a Jewish religion based on the God of love. That would be wonderful. It'd help stop a lot of the murdering and killing going on in the West Bank and Gaza. It'd just help the Jews enormously, the Jewish people. But the trouble is, of course, you've got to break ranks, and you've got to be truthful, and you got to be intelligent and logical. It's no good just living a lie, manifesting a lie. What's the point of that? You're just going to confuse children more and more and more. Break away. And of course, for Christians, Jewish Christian churches, I wish there was a Christian church in Melbourne, Australia, where I am. There isn't one. They're all Jewish Christians. Lots of lovely children, lots of charity works, but they still go on about this Yahweh God being the same divine source of love as Jesus, and they all teach revelations should be there. That's Jesus, Yahweh coming back to start wars and famines and make your body sick. Jesus does all these things in the book of Revelation. That's why I rip it to pieces. And it's a great chapter. I'll be looking forward to getting up to it. I'll leave it at that now because it doesn't take long to have a long video when you're talking. But I'll do another chapter or two in the next video, and eventually I'll put them all, put the links on the various videos. So I hope this has interested you to look at this book or to follow the reading of the book. I'll read it all through if I can. I'm very ill at the moment. I'm not sure I'll finish reading it, but the book will be published certainly within a week or two. As I say, the publisher's got the full sort of document now, and it's just a matter of I just got to proofread the book and then tell them go ahead, distribute it. So it'll be available if you search for it somewhere. So so I hope and pray that my great friend Jesus of Nazareth, great spiritual teacher like Buddha, both pacifists, both of them taught you've got to clean your mind out. Both of them. Buddha said you've got to clean out the adventitious negativities from your mind and you'll have the clear light mind experience. Jesus said it's not what's on the outside of the cup that's the problem, it's the dirt inside the cup, inside your mind. That's the problem. You've got to clean it out. And when you do, then your eye will be single and your body will be filled with light. He and Buddha had the exact same spiritual awakening experience. Jesus went into another level though, 400 or 500 years after Buddha's realization. He realized he's got to go now and help the sick and the poor and the outcasts. So he brought love down to children who were outcast. Buddha had a similar dynamic. Of course, the Hindu tradition, there was the caste system in India. It was really vicious. If you were down the bottom and you were a Brahmin at the top and you were just a Bangi down the bottom, you were considered just scum. And you weren't allowed to hold any high positions or do anything like that. Or if you got touched by one, they'd almost beat them to death for polluting them with their dirty bodies. Jesus goes, so Buddha overcame that by saying, no, even they have this experience. Everyone has this experience in them. Buddha also tore apart the sort of duality of the Hindu religion to bring it into a singularity. Jesus tears apart the duality of the Jewish religion, two different gods. But the Jews are cunning, deceptive. Not Mars and Pax, Yahweh and Yahweh. Have your cake and eat it too. Sorry, doesn't work with me. You either love or you hate. Can't be both at the same time. So, okay. So there we go. So I hope you'll be interested in the book and following the next chapters. I really enjoyed doing it. It's been difficult because I've been so ill. It's taken me about a year to get it all together. And it could be much better written because I'm in a lot of pain from this. There it is there, fungal growth in the lung. Quite neurotoxic to the brain. So anyway, there we go. There's the beginning of the book. That was a long chapter. Some of them long. But hopefully the other chapters will be a bit shorter. Okay then, I'll leave it at that. And I shall continue on reading the chapters and put them all onto the videos as I go along. Of course, follow your own way home to heaven, but it must have the characteristics of love, compassion, non-violence, forgiveness, equanimity, generosity, honesty, spiritual truth, and help those who have fallen down. If you've got those qualities and that's who you are and nothing else really, you will enter heaven. Whether you're a Jew, a Christian, a Muslim, a Sikh, a Hindu, a Buddhist, an atheist, a New Age child, it doesn't matter. It's about the new covenant, as Jesus called it, the characteristics or the disposition of your character. That's what matters. The oneness of love in you. It's all about your character. You'll know them by their fruits, said Jesus. That's what make fruits of love. May we all try to bring heaven's love on earth. Heaven knows we certainly need it. Bye for now.